You're listening to The Power Project. I'm your host, Brandy Voth. I also like to think that I'm your guide along this journey of purpose, which is where you will hopefully end up at the end of this podcast. I'm a mom, a wife, a daughter, a friend, an entrepreneur, an advocate in the fight against human trafficking. I wear a lot of hats, y'all, but don't we all? And most importantly, I am passionate about inspiring women to go out and lead purpose-filled lives while owning your God-given power. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Hey friends, welcome back to The Power Project. Now, it may seem like you are on day 97 of socially isolating or quarantining if you're listening to this in real time, but it is April 2nd. I have mixed emotions about March. Part of me feels like I'm glad it's over. The other part says, my gosh, it lasted forever. But either way, it is a new month and it is what it is. We all have a new norm that we are navigating. Speaking of the new norm, if you hear dirt bike noises in the background of this podcast episode, just know that the kids are out of the house and they chose to ride dirt bikes as soon as I sat down to record this episode, which is ironic because this episode is all about distractions. I've been incredibly distracted today and had a hard time focusing and getting my head together to record the podcast. So then as soon as I sat down to hit record and go live, the dirt bike's fired up. So if you hear that, don't be distracted. But what we want to talk about is distractions in your family and your marriage and how this moment right now, what we've been given, this is a gift where you have a distraction-free family/marriage right now. You have time to focus on loving the ones that you're with. And I can't take credit for the subject matter of today's episode because while my husband and I were taking a walk yesterday and we were talking about how this really is not something new for our family. It's not unfamiliar territory for us to spend time with each other and our kids and not have a lot of people around. And we've really been in that place for a few years now. And so while we were discussing this, he said, maybe you should talk about this on your podcast because there are probably a lot of other people that are struggling with learning how to just love the ones you're with and be content with who you're with. Now, in full disclosure, this was not always us, not even a little bit. We were the family that we always had people around. Our kids were raised in very much of a tribe, village feel. There were other mamas in the group and dads in the group that would help parent our kids, and we would help parent other people's kids. And our house was where everyone came to eat multiple times a week. It was where all the kids congregated, which they do still congregate here. And we didn't take vacations by ourselves. There was very little that we did. We kind of had a tribe that we did everything with. And then I remember one time we were flooded in, and where we live, we have a house that's on a hill and we don't have immediate neighbors. So if there is a flood, then we are literally just stuck by ourselves for a few days. And at the time, my husband had spoken for quite some time about wanting to have a house on a private island, just something small, like a little island somewhere. I don't know. He thought it would be so cool to have that until we were flooded in for a few days. And at that point, after 3 days of kind of feeling like we might lose our minds and our kids driving us nuts and us driving each other crazy, he quickly realized that this wasn't really all that it was cracked up to be. And the actual conversation went something like, I was wrong. I never want to live on an island. I love my family, but I need my friends. And that's probably how several of you are feeling right now. You're probably feeling like you're not really sure how you're going to get out of this whole deal while you're stuck at home with your spouse and your children. You're trying to figure out how to get along with one another, how to be in such close proximity with one another and spend so much time together. So I wanted to share with you guys our transition and why I feel like what I have to share with you all may be beneficial. There may be some takeaways that can help you through this process, because a few years ago, we transitioned through some life events and some growing pains. We transitioned into this place where we really started spending a lot of time with just our family. And just out of protecting our like spiritual, mental, emotional well-being, and really growing our closeness as a family. So in that time period, in that transition, because we were such a social family, we really went through some trials and some struggles with that along the way that I'm sure several of you are going to be experiencing. So for starters, our kids did not understand this. They were a few years younger. They were so accustomed to having people around constantly that it was completely different for them. They didn't know how to navigate people not coming to our house every day. They didn't know why we didn't have people joining us for dinner. They really, I'm pretty certain that they didn't even know that we could take our boat out with just the four of us until we did. And then I'll never forget the conversation of, what do you mean no one's coming with us? So we went through that. We had to navigate that. And it was lonely, because before where we are now in our marriage and our family, we always had people around. So if we were irritated with one another, we always had a friend that we could go vent to. If we needed some space from one another, we always had someone around that we could escape to. We really we had a lot of distractions around our marriage, where that we didn't have to intentionally realize that this is the person, these are the kids, this is the family, it's us as a whole. And also in the beginning, it was really easy to turn on one another and snap on one another and be irritated with one another. And I want to see if I can, by any means, any way possible, help you guys navigate this a little more seamlessly, because I didn't have any tools in my wheel well to start with this. I didn't know, I didn't have anyone that said, hey, this is what happens if you go from a really social family to a less than social family. This is the transition you're going to go through. I didn't have that. So I want to be able to provide that for you, because what we did in the beginning was we would snap on each other. We would turn on one another. We would be short with each other. We didn't necessarily have the greatest amount of patience in this time period, because it's weird, you guys. Like, I'm sure you're sitting at home and you're like, I'm lonely and I'm married to you and you guys are my kids and these are the people that I'm supposed to love more than anyone on the face of the planet, and you're driving me nuts and I need someone else to take this weight off my shoulders. So just know that you're not alone. It doesn't make you a horrible person, especially if you are someone that has always had people around like we did. Now, some of you listening today may actually really enjoy your alone time. Maybe you're really, really used to having no one around except for your family. Maybe you are a tight little wolf pack and you don't need any other outsiders. If that's the case, maybe this episode's not for you, but possibly you have friends that are going through this and you can share with them and help them, because we are all in this together and we all need to be able to find resources and ways to help our community navigate this new normal. So I've come up with ways that you can love the ones that you're with, even like in the midst of all this, when they're all that you have. Not just love them, but really love them well and be able to navigate the alone together that you're having. And you guys, I'm going to tell you right now, spoiler alert, before we even get to the end, it is so much more of a blessing than what you could ever imagine. Once you go through this, once you go through the process of having the distractions eliminated, of having the people around you eliminated, of learning to really, truly lean and depend on your spouse and your kids, your bond is going to be so much stronger when you come out of this. That is what we were talking about yesterday when we were walking. And that is why it was on my heart to share with you all, because we are so good together now. So good. All like the four of us, my husband, my two little kids that are in this house, we are so good together. But we had to go through having the distractions eliminated in order to get there. So while none of this that is going on all around you is by any means good or wanted or a blessing or any of that, what's happening in your own personal home can truly be a blessing. Like you can take good away from this, and you can come out a stronger family unit that is much more independent together. So the first thing that you really need to know about loving those immediate ones that you're with right now, you can call it stuck with or blessed with, either way. The first way is going to be that you have to understand this is a new situation for everyone. So when in the beginning, like understand what others are going through, understand what your husband's going through, understand what your wife is going through, understand what your kids are going through, because when we really shifted gears and the kids would ask questions about, why isn't anyone going on the boat? Why isn't anyone coming over for dinner? Why aren't we having people around? We didn't understand that this was the monster we had created. We were like, why are you so needy? And why do you need people around constantly? This is just the way it is. But when we took the moment to step back away from that and truly understand that this was new territory for them. This was something they had never been in a position of before. Just like we had never been in that position, their entire lives were wrapped up with being surrounded by people. And so you have to understand right now, your kids are accustomed to having people around. Your kids are accustomed to having their social circles, and being stuck with their parents is as new to them as you being stuck with them is. Just like you and your husband, maybe you guys have never spent this much time together before. Take this time to understand that it's going to be a learning curve. It's going to be different than what you are accustomed to. The second thing that you need to know about loving who you're stuck with or blessed with is going to be that you have to extend grace to one another. My family, after we started kind of, spending intentional time together as just the family unit, we decided that we would get a motorhome. This was something that we had dreamt of for 10 years. Gosh, yeah, like 10 years. And we were so excited to get this motorhome. And we typically go all in when we decide to take action. So we didn't just get a motorhome. We booked a 12-day trip, 3,000 mile round trip in this motorhome. And we were so excited about this. So we loaded up, we packed up, and we took off down the road. Everyone in the family was just pumped and thrilled, and we were so ready to spend time together. Within 4 hours of being on the road, I was regretting the purchase and seriously contemplating turning around and coming back home. It was it was like 4 hours of my husband needing something, my kids needing something, me needing peace and quiet and time to work, my kids needing something to eat, my husband needing something to eat, me needing something to eat. It was just a lot of moving parts. And then it was my kids wrestling with one another, and then it was them arguing with one another, and then it was my husband and I arguing with each other. And by the end of day 2, I think it's safe to say that all of us collectively were ready to lose our minds. Actually, we had already lost our minds on one another at this point. And it looked like having to go back to that understanding this is a new situation for everyone. So while we had become accustomed to spending time together, we were not used to being in that close of proximity with one another. So we had to go back to the understanding, but then we had to extend grace with each other, and we had to sit down and have conversations that looked like, dad apologizing for being short-tempered and not having enough patience, and mom apologizing for losing her mind and cursing, and kids apologizing for being a-holes. And yes, unfortunately, that was an actual conversation that we had. And we all chose to extend grace and move forward in this situation because it just wasn't something we were familiar with. Now, thankfully, we were able to move through that because now that's become one of our absolute favorite things to do as a family. We love loading up in the motorhome, spending a couple weeks, just the four of us, and we've been able to navigate that new normal there. Hey guys, if you've considered starting a podcast, but you're overwhelmed by how to actually launch, I've created a basics of podcasting course over on Skillshare. So you can sign up for my course and get 2 months of free premium membership. Skillshare is where I learn all types of skills that I don't know how to do otherwise. I'll include the link in the show notes. You can head over to Skillshare and search Brandy Voth's class, The Basics of Podcasting. Now, speaking of patience, like with dad having to have patience and losing his temper, having patience is going to be the third key in really, truly loving the ones that you're stuck with well. And this, it looks like knowing that this is not going to happen overnight, right? This is a new normal. It's uncharted territory. We're learning to understand one another. We're learning to extend grace, but we also have to have the patience to give our family time and know that while this is going to be good for us, it's not just going to happen really, really quickly. So for instance, for us, my kids went from wondering who was coming on the boat with us to starting to sink into a rhythm of being happy that they could wakeboard as much as they wanted and they didn't have to trade off time with one another. And it also looks like knowing that every single day that you're spending without people constantly around is one more day spent growing closer to your immediate family, which is helping you throughout the long run of this. This is not a sprint. This is more of a marathon of getting there to just really be comfortable with being with the people inside of your own home. The fourth step to this, so we're understanding one another, we're extending grace, we're having patience with one another, but the fourth is really crucial. You have to realize that your routine doesn't look the same when other people are not around. So you have to take part in each other's activities. If your kids are accustomed to having other friends over to play baseball, jump on the trampoline, play video games, you need to step up and feel that role, that part, and play the video games with them, play baseball with them, jump on the trampoline with them, because they're still looking for that same interaction, and it can be the same, just with you placed in that position rather than the external friends. Same goes for you parents. I love, like maybe the best way to speak to my heart is a patio with some soft music, a fire, and a glass of wine. It is my all-time favorite of all things. And I love to share that with girlfriends. My girlfriends that know me know that that's my love language and that's my favorite place to be. You will not find me out. I don't need to go shopping. I don't need to go dancing. I don't just give me a patio, a fire, girlfriends. And my husband stepped into that role when my girlfriends weren't around, and that has become some of our most cherished time. It's not his favorite thing. He's not really big, especially if it's a little bit cool outside and his ears are chilly. I've got to get him a little beanie or toboggan for his head, but he does that because he knows that it fills my soul, that it's something that my friends feel when they're around, and when they're not around, I need that activity, so he's able to step in and take that role. But he's willing to do that because I take part in what he enjoys. If he's watching a show about working on cars and I sit with him and pay attention to it and kind of pretend to enjoy it, then it fills him up. If he's working on a project that I come take part in and pay attention to, it makes him happy. And heck, this week I jumped on the back of his dirt bike and let him take me for a ride. He was thrilled. I was kind of terrified, but either way, we were taking part in each other's activities. So this is a really great way for you to build that bond and eliminate that loneliness and that longing for friends to be around if you can step into those roles with one another. So the next step to really, really loving those that you're stuck with well is going to be that you have to be flexible. So this looks like trying new things as a family that you wouldn't have ordinarily tried, but that it pushes you all out of your comfort zone and it lets you learn new interests together. It lets you discover new things together. It lets you build and create new family traditions that maybe you wouldn't have tried when you had other people around. So for instance, we've become a hiking style family, which my kids have always hiked. And when I was younger, I always hiked. When my husband was younger, he always hiked. We go on vacations and we see people that are hiking and we're like, one of these days we're going to become a hiking family. But we have dirt bikes and we have ATVs and we have a Jeep and we do a lot of off-roading. So there's not necessarily a need for hiking always. However, we've really enjoyed getting into nature and taking hikes recently because it's been a new way to bond. It's been a way to go even deeper with our family and experience something that we wouldn't have experienced otherwise if we had other people around and other distractions. In turn, we've also become mushroom hunters, which is, if you listen to my last episode, you'll hear all about the morel mushroom. And this is a new activity that we're loving as a family, that we're doing as a family. If I had friends around, if my kids had friends around, this would probably be something I would send them to do. If I had girlfriends around, maybe it would be something that we did. But instead, this is an activity that we've created with our family and we're flexible. So in this time, I want to encourage you to get out of your comfort zone. Go do something you wouldn't have done before because your family will come out stronger by creating new routines, new habits, new traditions, and new activities. But the final piece to really, really learning to love those that you're stuck with, learning to embrace the family unit that you have at this time without outside distractions is communication. You have to communicate with one another. If you need a time out, if you need time to clear your mind or just have some peace and quiet, communicate that with your family. I personally needed some time today to focus and work because you guys, I don't know about you, but the transition of work from home mom and stay at home mom and midst of everything going on, it's crazy and I'm having a really hard time keeping my day structured, scheduled, and everything done. So I needed to communicate to my family what was happening and that I needed them to step away for a moment. Also, explain to your family that this is a new experience, that you understand. Like, talk with your kids and communicate with your kids and your husband how you understand this is a new normal that you're all navigating. Talk to them about how you're really, really used to having people around, but that this is an opportunity that your family can learn from and grow from. And finally, on that communication piece, make sure that you show gratitude to one another. We learned that when we are doing long haul trips and we're driving for 2 days straight, only stopping to sleep, it's a lot for our kids to be cooped up in a motorhome for that many hours without really getting outside to run and play when they're such outdoors kids. So we thank them every time. We're like, hey, thanks for being really great on this trip. When we get to our destination, you're going to get to play and run, but thank you for being patient. Here at home, in this situation that we're all walking through together, we thank our kids daily for being troopers, you guys. If your kids are being terrible in the midst of this, they're still being troopers. And we thank one another. We thank each other for taking part in one another's activities. We thank each other for helping with housework. We thank each other for making amazing dinners or making a frozen pizza. So make sure that you're communicating your gratitude with one another because the more gratitude that you express, the more valued your family, your loved ones feel, and the closer you become. I want to really, really, really communicate and express to you here how much of a blessing this can be on the other side. I want you to realize that while you're not going to get there overnight, if you can just remember the key takeaways of understanding what each other's going through, extending grace, having patience, taking part in each other's activities, being flexible, and communicating with one another, you really will grow from this. And you really will find that you married that person for a reason. There are things that you really enjoy about that person. And your kids are pretty cool kids that you might not mind being stuck with. I hope that this time finds you all healthy, well, and blessed. And I hope that you enjoyed something in this episode today. If you did, then I ask that you just do me a favor. Head over to the Power Project podcast wherever you listen to, whether it's on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, any of the places. Do a favor, write us a review, give us a rating. We'll take 5 stars. And I can't wait to chat with you next week. But until then, go out and live your best purpose-filled lives.